They train them to stand still while the world falls apart around them. Not metaphorically, literally. Tourists scream, pigeons scatter, men in suits bark into earpieces, and the guard doesn't blink, doesn't shift his weight. Plus, doesn't exist, officially, as anything other than furniture in a bearskin hat.
Perimeter report, over.
I guess.
Clear.
Always
Holding
thought
position.
that was the whole
Stand
job.
by. Incoming.
Look,
Copy.
stand there.
Guard unmoved.
Look intimidating.
Affirmative. Maintaining.
Be part, actually,
Proceeding to next.
of the aesthetic. Yeah, and I was wrong about that on the afternoon Princess Charlotte came sprinting down the east corridor in her school shoes, skidding on marble, with 3 protection officers behind her, and something in her expression I hadn't seen on a royal face in 11 years of service.
Any irregularities?
Not fear.
None, ma'am.
Worse than
All is
fear.
in order.
Plus the kind of face a person makes when the thing they were afraid of has already happened. And to be fair, say only thing that stood between that moment and something I still can't write in a formal report was a man named Sergeant Daniel Hare, who hadn't moved in 2 hours and who, in the next 4 minutes, would make a decision so quiet, so clean, so utterly without panic that I'd spend the next 3 weeks trying to understand how a human being is built that way.
Princess, please wait.
This is what I saw.
Never. I must
The
be
thing
free.
about the East Corridor is that it doesn't echo the way you'd expect. And you'd think a stretch of marble that long, 62 feet, I've paced it, occupational damage, would throw sound back at you. Like a cathedral. It doesn't. It absorbs it, like swallows footsteps whole, turns voices into something thin and unconvinced, and I've worked palace security for 11 years and I still can't explain the acoustics. I've stopped trying. There are things about this building that predate everyone in it by 300 years. And they aren't interested in explaining themselves to me. I was logging the afternoon shift changeover when I heard the shoes.
Halt in the
School
name of the
shoes
king!
on marble sound
Stop! You
different
cannot
from
escape!
dress shoes,
By
from
royal
boot
decree,
soles,
surrender now!
from the soft padded
This way
approach
leads
of
to
protection
peril.
officers in
Cease
their
this at
sensible
once!
dark footwear. School shoes sound like someone dropped a handful of coins and then kept dropping them rhythmically at speed. I looked up from my clipboard. I'm always holding a clipboard. It's become a problem. My therapist mentioned it
I have you,
twice.
Your Highness.
Saw the princess,
Thank you,
you know. At the far end of the corridor, moving faster than I'd seen a royal move indoors since the fire drill of 2019. Charlotte, 14 years old. Which school uniform still on? Blazer half off one shoulder. Hair doing something chaotic. Behind her, but at a distance that told me they'd been caught mid-transition and were closing fast. 2 PPOs and a woman from the household staff whose name I could never remember, but who I always associated with the smell of good soap. I took 1 step forward out of instinct. Then I saw Sergeant Hare, and I stopped. He was posted at the corridor's midpoint, which is standard, which is where he always was on Thursday afternoons. At ease position, but not actually at ease. And the way they do it, the invisible tension that looks like stillness to anyone not paying attention. He'd been there since 2:30. That's the job. That's the full description of the job some days. Honestly, stand here, be present, project the idea of consequence. Charlotte was going to reach him in approximately 4 seconds. The PPOs were shouting something. TBH, I couldn't parse it. Plus, the marble swallowed the consonants. She pretty much hit his line of sight and she didn't slow. Here is where I should tell you what I expected. That she'd veer around him, or he'd step aside, or there'd be some smooth, protective redirect that palace staff call a soft intercept in the training manuals. A hand on a shoulder. Plus, a gentle geometric adjustment of bodies in space. The kind of thing that doesn't end up in reports
I've got the
because
rest
it
of
was
the
never an
corridor, Your
incident,
Royal Highness.
technically. What happened was that Princess Charlotte ran directly into Sergeant Daniel Hare's chest, and he caught her. Not grabbed, not intercepted. Caught. Both arms. Full stop. Which, like he'd known exactly where she was going to land and had arranged himself accordingly 3 seconds before she got there. She didn't pull away, which that was the part that rewired something in my understanding of what I was watching. She didn't pull away. She went very still, face against the front of his tunic, and the sounds she made. I'm not going to transcribe them here. And some things should stay in their original form, which is private and not mine, and the kind of thing you log as emotional distress, self-resolving, no intervention required, and then sit with
Guard,
for weeks.
We must talk.
The PPOs
Ma'am, I
arrived
cannot.
and
Protocol forbids
stopped.
it.
The
This
woman
is
with the
urgent. It's
soap
about your
smell
ex-wife.
arrived. I
What
think
about her?
stopped. None of us spoke. Sergeant Hare didn't speak either. I've thought about this. That was the decision. The one I've spent weeks trying to anatomize.
Character knew she was
He didn't
coming.
ask what was wrong.
How could you know that?
And he didn't look over
I
her head at
overheard
us
it,
with a
sir.
question on
That
his
is a
face.
serious breach
He
of
didn't
protocol.
adjust pretty much.
I only meant
His
to help.
posture or clear his
The
throat
shoes on
or
the
do any of the
cobblestones 60
hundred
feet away.
small things a person
heard the
does when they
shoes.
are deeply uncomfortable and managing
Despite
it
the
by
acoustics.
emotion. He
Training,
just
Your
held
Highness.
still. The way he'd been
acoustics swallow
standing
everything.
for 2 hours,
Not
except
for
now
the
with a
ears of the crowd.
14-year-old girl attached to the front of him, and he applied the same quality of stillness to that situation
Princess,
as he'd been
character is
applying
everything.
to an empty corridor.
Defines our duty and our
I have a
legacy.
note in my personal
Never
log
forget
from that
that.
afternoon.
I understand.
It says he made it small. I capitalized it because I was rattled, and apparently caps lock is how I communicate urgency to my future self. What in my opinion I meant was, he made the moment small enough for her to be inside it. No drama of response. In my opinion, no escalating energy. He didn't perform calm. Performing calm is a thing I've seen. It has a texture. It has a faint smell of effort. He just was it. And the way the corridor was marble. The way the windows were
Your
tall.
Highness, the morning dispatches.
The way Thursday afternoons
Thank you.
at the
Please
palace had
proceed.
a specific quality of gold light that came through the upper panes
Highness,
at an
the
angle that
perimeter
made
is
everything
secure.
look like a painting
checks
someone
are
hadn't
complete.
finished yet.
Very good.
She pulled
Thank you
back
for your
after 90
diligence.
seconds. I think timed it.
Guard, I see
Which
you
I
are at
time
your
things.
post early.
It's the clipboard
Yes,
problem
Your
at
Royal
its
Highness.
root, I
I've been
think.
here since 6 o'clock.
90
2 hours
seconds.
early. Your dedication is noted.
She stepped back,
Thank you, ma'am.
one hand still loosely at the fabric of his tunic sleeve. And then she looked up at him, and I watched her do the thing that teenagers do. The recalibration, the checking of the external world for
king is
signs
failing.
that the internal
Your Highness,
collapse has been
I'm off
visible.
rotation.
That
He is
someone will
asking
make a
for you.
face that tells her it was
Please.
too much.
Understood.
It was
Lead the way.
embarrassing. It was recorded and will be replayed. Sergeant Hare's face did nothing. His face was actually, I want to be precise here, professionally neutral,
Characters, a
but not
question?
in the vacant way.
No, thank you.
Not in the way that
None
reads
at this
as
time.
absence or
Very
deliberate blankness. It was the neutrality of someone who has decided that this particular moment doesn't require their face to do any work. A courtesy, an offering of space. I am not going to
Character ahead, sir.
make this about my
Good
reaction to your reaction. The calculation was so clean I almost missed it. She let go of his sleeve.
Princess, an incident
said-
occurred in the corridor on Thursday.
And this
I
is
see.
verbatim.
And the report?
I wrote it down
It is here,
immediately
Your Highness.
after,
I assure you,
and
no
in the
write-up will
margins
be
of my
necessary.
clipboard log. He said, I've got
I'm
the
not
rest of the
writing it up, Your
corridor,
Highness.
Your Royal Highness.
Are you certain?
That was
no
all.
records will remain?
She looked
None,
at him
ma'am.
for
It
another
never
half
happened.
second.
Good.
Something
Thank you.
moved across her face that I don't have
If
a
the
clinical
character
term
already
for.
didn't write it up,
Sort of
I'd have
not
been
gratitude, exactly.
asked. I wasn't so
Closer to
clearly,
recognition.
She did.
Plus, the way a person looks when they realize
The princess,
they've been
that wasn't the
handled
first
correctly, which
I
is
see.
rare
And
enough
what of
that
the
the
last 72
recognition
hours?
of it's
A
own
pattern
small
emerges,
shock.
Your Highness.
Then
Then
she
we must
straightened her
confirm it.
blazer,
Your
One
Highness,
shoulder
this is
up,
not the first time.
and then the other, which
Indeed,
smoothed
it has
the
been 3
front,
years.
lifted her sort of
The pattern
chin
repeats,
in the
ma'am.
way they all
Then
learn.
we must confirm it.
Some posture instructor's legacy,
Highness,
some
this is not the
generational
first time.
encoding of the spine.
Indeed, it has been
And she
3
turned
years.
and walked back the way
The
she'd
pattern
come.
repeats, ma'am.
Steady.
Then we must
slower.
confirm it.
The PPOs fell in on either side without a word. The woman whose name I could never remember watched them go and then turned and walked back toward the household wing, and I thought, she will never mention this to anyone.
The character
I thought,
comes to the
neither will
corridor,
I.
not
I
to you.
basically thought that is how this building survives. I stood there holding my clipboard,
quiet
and
there.
Sergeant Hare had returned. In the space of whatever time the whole thing had taken, 4 minutes, 40 seconds, I've it logged, to his post, to his
Princess, the
position,
Royal Guard remains
feet
as
at the
quiet as
correct
ever.
angle,
Indeed.
hands behind his back,
presence is
eyes
reassuring in
forward,
its constancy.
carrying the same still quality he'd been carrying all afternoon.
The
He didn't
princess is
look at
pulling
me.
back from her
I
engagements.
walked over
It's a
anyway.
necessary adjustment.
I don't entirely know
I see.
why.
Her language has grown more
I'm not
direct
a
as she's
man who
matured.
initiates conversations
Precisely. It
during
sets up her
shift.
corridor role
My
perfectly.
ex-wife had several
Your
things
Highness,
to say
the
about that
character knows
at
you will
length
be there
over
this
several
afternoon.
years.
I see.
But I, TBH, walked
Confirmed, Your
over and I
Highness.
stood beside him, and I looked at the far end of the
Princess, a
corridor
reminder
the
you
pretty
don't talk
much
to her.
same way he was looking at it,
Protocol
which felt like
forbids
the
it.
correct orientation for whatever this was. After a moment, I said, "You knew
Princess,
she was
a
coming,"
reminder you don't talk
he
to
said.
her.
I heard the
Protocol
shoes.
forbids it, ma'am.
I thought about that. I got acoustics in
You're
here,
not
swallow
character, don't
everything.
talk.
A pause
Character
that had
knows
a
I'm there
particular weight
sometimes.
to it. Not everything. I wrote that down too, in the margin. Not everything. I don't know what to do with it yet. What I know is this. Sergeant Daniel Hare has been posted in the East Corridor
Highness,
every
I
Thursday
understand what I have
afternoon
to
for
do with
3
this.
years.
Yes,
He is
proceed with
31
caution.
years old, 7 years in the Household Division, 2 years in this specific rotation. His
Your
service
Highness, you have
record
to
is
file in.
unremarkable in the institutional sense.
This way, please.
And which in this context means reliably, consistently, exactly what was required, and nothing that drew attention. He has never
Your Highness,
fired
what
a
happens
weapon
to the
in
quiet
active duty.
corridor if I
He has
file
never
the protocols
filed a
change?
complaint or received a formal commendation. He stood in a marble corridor for
Character
2
change
hours
rotation
and heard the
just
difference
as it gets
between
managed.
school shoes and dress shoes from 60 feet away. He held a frightened 14-year-old girl and made it small. I walked back to my post. Plus, I
She'd lose
reread
the
my
corridor.
afternoon log 3 times.
She knows the process.
And the lights in the East Corridor went gold, and then amber,
God,
and
do
then
you
the
understand
particular
the
gray of
arrangements for the
early
royal
English
procession?
evening that settles
Your
over
silence
London
speaks
like a second
volumes.
ceiling,
The king will be
lower and
pleased.
more honest
Carry
than
on.
the first. Whatever kind of had happened, whatever Charlotte had been running from, whatever the PPOs had been failing to intercept, whatever the woman with the soap smell had been hurrying toward, wasn't in my report. I wrote, "Shift changeover completed, East Corridor. No incidents," which was true. Which was also the most dishonest, accurate sentence I've written in 11 years. I went home. I ate something I didn't taste.
Your Royal
I sat
Highness,
in my
the personnel
kitchen and I
record you
thought about a
requested. I
man
pulled it this
standing
morning.
still in a
Thank
corridor
you,
while
officer.
everything
This is
around him
precisely
moved.
what I needed.
I thought about the decision, the clean, quiet, invisible decision,
She was
not to
just
make a
there
child's
when she
worst
found it.
moment bigger than it had to be. I thought, they train them for that. Then I thought, no, they don't.
She was just
Some
there,
things you
and she
can't be
found
trained
it.
for. Some things you either have or you don't. Built in at some depth below instruction, below procedure, below the 47 pages of the Household Division Conduct Manual that I've memorized, and which doesn't contain a single line about the specific weight of a moment when
She's
someone
going to be
needs you to
fine.
be still.
I know
I
the
picked up my
corridor will be
clipboard.
there.
I put it down.
Thank you. I trust
didn't
your
sleep well,
guidance.
which is also unremarkable, and also not what I'm writing down here.
conversation is
And what
done,
I'm writing
Your
down
Highness.
is this. The next morning, I arrived
I
at the
shall
palace
reopen
at
the book to the folded
6:45,
page.
which is standard.
Very well,
I
God.
walked the East Corridor in the early gray.
conversation is
the
done,
building
Your
still
Highness.
mostly quiet, the marble doing its usual
shall reopen the
acoustic
book to
thing
the
of
folded
eating
page.
sound, of denying
Very
the
well, God.
evidence of presence. Sergeant Hare was already posted. He'd been there since 6. I know because I checked. I checked because I am the kind of man who checks things, which is the clipboard problem stated in its most essential form. And because something in me needed the number. 6 a.m., 2 hours before his shift begins, standing in a corridor that
What
was
is it?
currently holding nothing but bad light and old air. To be real. To be confirmed. Plus, to be mine in the way that only written, logged, verified things can be mine. He didn't acknowledge me. I didn't say anything, which I walked past, and I thought, he was here before it opened. He'll be here after it closes, which is not remarkable, which is the whole job some days. Which I haven't been able to stop thinking about. The second time, to be honest, I went looking for Sergeant Hare. I told myself it was professional. I'm good at that. Plus, telling myself things in the
I see
language
your
of
hands want to
procedure,
write,
following
but the weight
up
of
on
memory holds
incident
them.
adjacent
Your Highness, I
observation,
cannot.
which
My hands are
ensuring
bound
duty
by duty.
continuity,
Then let
conducting for
comfort
what
serve
it's
where
worth,
words cannot.
informal personnel welfare check, which I have a whole vocabulary for it. My therapist calls it institutional deflection. which she explained in a voice that suggested she found it charming in the way you find a recurring bad
Yes, Your
habit
Highness,
charming,
logs show nothing.
fondly, warily,
Perfect.
with no
Our secret.
expectation of
As you
reform.
wish.
I found him in the small guard room
All
off
clear
the south
tonight?
passage,
Yes,
the one
Your
that
Highness.
smells
Thanks,
permanently of old boot polish
Perfect.
and the ghost
Our
of
secret.
someone's egg
As you
sandwich
wish.
from approximately 2007. He was sitting with his tunic unbuttoned at the top 2 buttons, off rotation. I'm technically off duty for another 40 minutes, and he was
The
reading,
logs confirm it, Your
not a
Highness.
briefing
Nothing again.
document,
I see.
not
The
a
pattern
patrol
holds.
map,
Indeed, we
a
shall review
paperback,
again.
which the spine
well.
was cracked
Let
in
us
the
proceed.
particular way of a book that had been read more than once, the pages soft with it. I said, "Room for a question?" He looked up, folded the corner of his page, which
Your
told
Royal
me
Highness, we
something.
humbly petition for your
Either he
wise
didn't
counsel.
mind pausing or
Your
he'd
petition is
expected
heard.
something was coming.
We shall deliberate with care.
I couldn't tell which.
We are most grateful,
Which
Your
that was a
Highness.
recurring problem with Sergeant Hare. The quality of his stillness made his interior state almost entirely opaque. You couldn't read him the way you read most people, the micro-expressions, the shoulder tension, the small negotiations of the face. He'd stripped all of that out somehow, or never had it, or had it so compressed it registered as nothing. "Go ahead, sir," he said. I pulled a chair, sat, put my clipboard on the table between us. Bad habit, security
Palace
blanket,
endures, even in this
by
damp
my
air.
ex-wife's Exhibit
Indeed, Your
A,
Highness.
and then thought better of it and moved it to my lap, which is arguably worse. "What happened Thursday?" I said. "In the corridor." He waited, and "I'm not writing it up," I said. "I want that clear first."
The presence of the guard
"You
is
already
so
didn't write it
reassuring.
up," he said.
Duty
"I
and
know,
honor, Your
because if you
Highness.
had, I'd have
Your
been asked
precision is
about it."
admirable.
Which was, of course, completely
ma'am.
accurate, and briefly made me feel like I'd been caught in something I hadn't known I
God,
was
what is
doing.
this?
My
"The
apologies, Your Highness.
princess," I said.
Protocol requires I
Oh,
escort
that
you.
wasn't the first time. It wasn't a question. I'd spent 72 hours with the memory and with my own logs. I keep personal logs separate from the official record, have for years. It's probably a thing I should mention to someone professional. And I'd cross-reference dates, shift rotations, Charlotte's movements in the palace on Thursday afternoons. There was a pattern. Slight, and in the kind of thing that would dissolve in a data set, but cohered if you'd been watching the right corridor for the right reason. Sergeant Hare had been posted at the East Corridor midpoint for 3 years. Charlotte had been walking past that midpoint with increasing frequency and decreasing speed for about 14 months. "I mean, no," he said. "Not the first time." I sat with that for a moment. The guardroom hummed with the building's ancient plumbing. Oh, someone 3 floors above us was walking and I could hear it, which meant the sound in this part of the palace traveled entirely differently from the East Corridor, where everything was swallowed. This building had pockets of acoustic truth hidden inside its general silence. I'd never noticed before. I wrote for what it's worth. Acoustic pockets in the margin of my clipboard log, and then felt embarrassed and turned the clipboard over. "She comes to the corridor," I said. She doesn't come to you. She comes to, in my opinion, the corridor." "It's quiet
No incidents
there,"
to report,
he said.
Your Highness.
"The whole palace is
The
quiet."
record is accurate for
He looked at
11
me
years.
with the patience of someone who understood.
The logbook
That,
is
in my
complete,
opinion,
ma'am.
I was working something out and had decided to give me the space to do it. "Not the same quiet," I said, which he didn't confirm or deny it. He didn't need to. The confirmation was in the fact that he was still in the room, still present. It's still not doing the thing that most people do when a line of questioning approaches something true. The slight lean back, the recalibration of posture, the gathering of the face into something more managed. He just
A
sat.
professional follow-up is in order.
I thought about what I
I
knew,
shall frame it
which
as
was
a welfare
this.
check.
Charlotte had been
This
pulling away
deflection
from
will provide
scheduled
a pretext
engagements
for a
since
second
September.
seek.
Nothing dramatic enough to
Guard,
generate formal
I've come again.
concern. The
Your
kind of
Highness,
slight
I am off
withdrawals that
rotation.
get absorbed into
For how long?
adjustment period
40
language.
minutes, Your Highness.
Into she's growing up language. Into the institutional
A moment of
vocabulary
poetry
of a
amidst the
household
maps.
that has been
A welcome
managing the
respite
interior
indeed.
lives of its principals through exterior performance for 300 years and has become very, very good at it. and she'd been walking past a guard post in a marble corridor, getting slower until Thursday. She knows you're going to be there,
Go
I
ahead,
said.
Your Royal
Thursday
Highness.
afternoons, he,
Thank
I
you.
guess, said.
The corner fold
Yes.
is its expected, ma'am.
You're not. I
Ready
stopped.
to engage.
Started again. You don't talk to her. It's not my place to initiate. But she knows you'll catch her if she knows I'm there, he said. And then, after
Is my
a
form
pause
truly
that he
so
seemed to
lacking,
choose
guard?
carefully,
Your Highness' precision is
Sometimes
expected. Your
that's the
steps
whole
lack
thing.
Practiced grace.
I
see.
wanted to write that
I was
down.
not aware.
Then
I
observe
physically
and
wanted to
learn.
open my clipboard and write it in clean capital letters the way I'd written, "He made it small." Not everything and all the other fragments from the last 3 days that had accumulated in my margins, like evidence of something I hadn't named yet. I kept the clipboard on my lap. You, to be fair, understand what I'm going to have to do with this? I said. He looked at me. Not because of you, I said. TBH, not because of Thursday, because if there's a pattern of behavior
I
in
know
a
you're
principle
there,
that
Your
hasn't
Highness.
been formally assessed, and I know about it, and I've been logging adjacent events for 3 days, you have to file, he said. I have to consider filing. He nodded. Once. Plus, the nod of a man who'd known this was the shape of the conversation
Guard,
from the moment I'd
you
walked
understand what
in
you have to
and
do.
who had decided to
Yes,
let
Your
it
Royal
arrive
Highness.
at its
It
own
shall be done.
speed rather than
Proceed.
redirect it. What happens to the quiet corridor, I said,
Guards,
if I
not
file?
to attention!
It
Step
came out
forward.
less like a
Raise
question
swords.
than I'd meant it to.
Flash and
He
recover!
heard for what it's
Precision.
worth. The texture of it
Hold
anyway.
formation!
Protocols
Guards, not
change,
to
he
attention.
said. Rotation
Step
adjusts,
forward. Raise
and it gets
swords.
managed.
Clash and recover!
Managed.
Precision!
I know that word.
Hold
And that word is the
formation.
palace's most fundamental
Halt.
operating system.
State your business. I
Everything
am the
that can't be
princess. I seek
prevented is
entrance.
managed.
Your credentials,
Everything that
the
can't be
protocols are
managed
strict.
is
Here they are. I understand the
reclassified
stakes.
until it
Proceed.
falls into a category that can be. I've watched that process absorb some genuinely difficult human realities over 11 years and produce, on the other side, smoothed language and
No
adjusted
incidents to report,
schedules
Your
and the
Highness.
faint, a persistent smell of
Very
something
good.
that was
Maintain
never quite
vigilance.
resolved. She'd lose the corridor, I said. He didn't answer. He didn't answer because it wasn't a question and because he understood, the way he seemed to understand most things. Quietly, completely, without making a production of the understanding. That what I was doing was sitting in a guard room trying to work out whether the right call was the one that looked right on paper or the one that was right in the specific. An irreducible reality of a 14-year-old girl who walked slower every Thursday until she didn't walk at all. I picked up the clipboard.
The 6
I looked at
characters
my
are not
notes from the
present.
last 3 days. Not everything, which he made it small. Acoustic pockets, and 6 a.m., corridor empty. I turned to a fresh page. I wrote, East Corridor, Thursday p.m. Rotation, no incidents to report. Recommend duty continuity, Sergeant D. Hare, pending look, standard annual review. I honestly put the pen down, at which Hare was watching me without watching me. The peripheral attention he'd trained to operate like ambient awareness, the way a person in a good marriage knows where their partner is in a room
Your
without
Highness, I
looking.
stand to present the schedule.
3 years,
well.
I
Proceed.
said.
Oh no,
Same post,
the clipboard, where is it?
same
Calm
corridor,
yourself. Check the table.
good post.
It's not
he
here.
said.
I'm terribly
You
sorry.
requested it.
Your Highness,
A
the
silence.
moment must be recorded.
Personnel have you
Precision is
know.
paramount.
The record, he
The
said.
hands cannot dast.
I pulled it this morning. I paused. You requested it 6 months before she started using that corridor regularly, which means you didn't. You weren't placed there because of her. No. You were just there, I said. And sort of, she found it. He looked at me directly then. One of the few times in the
Checking the
conversation he'd done it with full attention rather than the comfortable
Nothing here.
peripheral angle. His face was the same
to
as
the
it
next.
always was, professionally neutral, the
The end
courtesy
of
of
the month
blankness.
already.
Under it, something
ma'am.
I was only beginning to
The last
learn how to
glimpse before the
read,
changeover.
a quality that wasn't
Carry on.
warmth exactly, wasn't sentiment. That was something more structural. Honestly, reliability, the kind that doesn't announce itself, the kind of that shows up at 6 a.m. and says nothing about it. She's going to be fine, he said. You don't know well that. No, he said, but I know the corridor will be there Thursday.
The birth
picked
is
up his
imminent,
book.
Your Highness.
Reopened
I
it to the
understand.
folded page.
Proceed with haste.
The conversation, as far as he was concerned, had arrived somewhere and was done. I sat for another 30 seconds. Then I stood. I picked up the clipboard, walked to the door. Plus,
Your Highness,
I stopped
we
with
knew
my
they were
hand
coming.
on the frame.
How? We were careful.
The book, I
The
said.
acoustics, sir.
What
They
is
heard
it?
Your shoes.
He turned
Then
it
we
over.
must leave.
Showed
Now.
well, me the cover without comment. I don't remember the title. I've tried to, and I can't. What I remember is that it was poetry. A collection of some kind, something British and old. Not the names people display, not the ones that look correct on a shelf. The kind. The of book that's been in someone's hands enough times that the cover has
Please,
softened at the
don't come
corners
closer.
and the pages have
Stand
gone the
down,
color
Your
of
Highness.
old
This is
tea.
for your protection.
I walked out.
I understand.
I walked back through the south passage and up through the main staff corridor and out into the east corridor, which was empty at that time of evening. The light was doing its amber to gray thing. The marble was doing its
didn't sleep
sound-eating
well.
thing. 62 feet of building that predated
Also
everyone in it
unremarkable.
and wasn't interested in explaining itself. I stood at the midpoint, where he stands. I tried to feel what it felt like to stand here for hours, not to observe, not to log, not to hold a clipboard and treat every moment as data to be captured and kept. Just to stand. To be present in the way that makes presence into something a frightened person
Royal
can
Guard, I'm
find
here
and
to
hold.
check on your post.
I couldn't do it.
You have been on duty
My
for
hands
6
kept
hours.
wanting
I
to
need the
write
number
something.
reported.
I filed the
Very well.
recommendation for duty
Your dedication
continuity
is
3
noted.
days later. Oh, it went through standard review and was approved without comment, which is the palace's most fluent language. The silence that means continue.
Your Highness, a moment.
Charlotte
A welfare
walked
check.
the corridor the
Second time,
following
guard?
Thursday.
Is there an incident?
She walked it
Precautionary
the
man.
Thursday
Standard
after.
observation.
I see.
I know because
Very
I
well,
checked the
proceed.
patrol logs and found what I'd
Guard, your tunic is
expected to
unbuttoned.
find.
Apologies, Your
Nothing.
Highness. Off duty.
Nothing.
Even so,
Nothing.
standards must be kept.
The
course.
administrative
Buttoning it
record
now.
of a
Good.
post where
Carry on.
nothing happened, which is the most successful outcome, which generates the least paperwork, and which is the closest thing this institution has to a gold star. I saw Hare once
Guard,
more before
report
the
on the
end
riding ring.
of
Your
the
Highness,
month,
all is in order. The instructors
briefly
proceed
in the
as
main
planned.
courtyard
And the new
during
horses?
a changeover.
Are they adapting?
He
They
was
are,
buttoning
ma'am.
his
No issues
tunic.
to report.
He had an expression that was no different from any other
don't mind,
expression
I
I'd
expected
seen
as
him
much.
wear, which wasn't an expression
Sir,
so much as
go
an
ahead.
orientation toward the world. Steady, present, slightly ahead of whatever was about to happen. He glanced at me. Sort of. A nod. The nod of someone who registered your existence and offered you the courtesy of acknowledgement and asked nothing further of the exchange. I nodded back. I thought, like, I don't know what he knows. I don't know what she told him,
What
or
happened
if
in
she
the
ever
corridor?
told him anything,
Your
or
Highness,
if the
there was an
whole
incident.
architecture
I
of
need the
its
full report.
built
now.
entirely
Of course,
look
Your Highness. It
in
is being
silence,
prepared.
in the standing
Good.
still, in the Thursday corridor, and the sound of school shoes from 60 feet away. And I thought, there are things about this building that predate everyone in it and aren't interested in explaining themselves. I thought, some of those things are people. He walked away across the courtyard, shoulders back, pace measured, the posture so embedded it looked like structure rather than training. He passed through the gate at the far end, and the courtyard returned to its usual self. Cold stone, London gray, the smell of damp that lives permanently inside palace walls like an old member of staff who retired but never left. My clipboard was in my hand, and the page was blank. I didn't write anything.